The summons arrived on a Monday morning, folded once too many times, and slipped under my apartment door like something that didn't want to be seen. I didn't open it right away, not because I was afraid, but because I already knew who it was from. Family court. Plaintiff. My own last name. There's a specific kind of humiliation that comes from seeing your family listed as your opposition. Black ink, formal language, no room for context. Just a neat declaration that someone who shared your table, your holidays, your childhood photos, now wanted to dismantle you in public. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, the envelope heavy in my hand, and laughed once under my breath. Of course they did. They called it a civil matter. That was the phrase my brother used when he finally worked up the nerve to call me. It's not personal, he said, voice too careful. It's just business. Business. I thought about the years I spent cleaning up after their messes, the loans I co-signed, the projects I salvaged quietly, the nights I stayed up rewriting contracts they didn't read, fixing problems they didn't know they'd created. Business, I repeated. Yes, he said quickly. You'll understand once this is resolved. Resolved. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I didn't remind him of the last time he'd needed my help, or the fact that I'd given it without asking for anything in return. I just said, I'll see you in court. He hung up without saying goodbye. The complaint itself was long, meticulously drafted, accusations layered carefully so none of them sounded outrageous on their own. Misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, unjust enrichment. Words chosen to suggest I'd taken something that was never mine to begin with. They wanted damages. They wanted public correction. They wanted to strip my credibility and leave me standing alone in a room of people ready to believe the worst. What they didn't want was a fight. They wanted me to fold. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep, not because I was spiraling, but because I was remembering. The first time my aunt told me I was lucky to be included in the family business, the way my cousin laughed when I corrected an error in a financial statement and said, "Relax, you're not the boss." The countless moments where my competence was tolerated only as long as it stayed quiet. They loved my usefulness, they resented my visibility, and now that I had both, they wanted neither. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and old paper. I arrived early, dressed plainly, no power suit, no performance, just clothes that fit and shoes that didn't distract me from my footing. I carried a single folder under my arm, thin, unassuming, easy to underestimate. My family arrived together. That was deliberate. My mother walked in first, chin lifted, expression composed. My brother followed, jaw tight, eyes scanning the room as if looking for exits. 2 aunts trailed behind them, whispering just loudly enough to be heard.
"There she is," one of them murmured. I didn't look up. I'd learned a long time ago that eye contact can feel like consent to people who don't deserve it. They took seats across the aisle from me, close enough to feel confrontational, far enough to pretend it wasn't. My mother leaned toward my brother and said something that made him smirk. I wondered, briefly, if they were still confident. When the bailiff called the case, the room shifted. People straightened, papers shuffled, conversations died mid-sentence. The judge entered without ceremony, older than I expected, calm, uninterested in theatrics, the kind of person who'd seen enough human behavior to recognize patterns before anyone opened their mouth. I stood when instructed, so did they. The judge looked down at the file, scanning quickly. Then he paused, just for a moment. I noticed. Most people wouldn't have, but I'd spent my life reading pauses. The plaintiff's attorney spoke first. He was polished, confident. His voice carried the practiced cadence of someone used to being believed. He painted a careful picture: a family betrayed, trust abused, an insider who crossed a line and hid behind technicalities. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't insult me directly. He didn't have to. He let implication do the work. From across the aisle, my mother nodded along, eyes glossy with rehearsed disappointment. My brother stared straight ahead. The judge listened without interruption. When the attorney finished, the judge nodded once and turned to me. "Ms. Hale," he said. Hearing my name out loud, alone, unaided, felt grounding. "You may respond," he continued. I stood. I didn't rush. I didn't apologize for the space I occupied. "I deny the allegations," I said simply, "and I request the opportunity to submit documentation." The plaintiff's attorney smiled thinly. "Of course," he said, "we welcome transparency." I almost smiled back. The judge looked down at his file again. "This case," he said slowly, "appears to hinge on the nature of authority and representation." "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney replied quickly. "Ms. Hale acted beyond her scope." The judge nodded. Then he looked at me again. "Ms. Hale," he said, "before we proceed, I need to clarify something." My mother shifted in her seat. "Yes, Your Honor?" He adjusted his glasses and looked at the top of the file again. "Your name," he said, "is familiar to me." The room stilled, not dramatically, but unmistakably. "I may be mistaken," the judge continued, "but have you previously appeared before this court in a professional capacity?" The plaintiff's attorney frowned. My brother's head snapped up. "I have," I said calmly. My mother turned to look at me for the first time that morning. The judge nodded slowly. "As an expert consultant," he said. "Is that correct?" "Yes," I replied. A murmur rippled faintly through the gallery. The plaintiff's attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor," he said quickly, "I don't see how that's relevant." "It's relevant," the judge interrupted, "if it pertains to credibility." He looked at me again. "You assisted the court on a financial compliance matter 3 years ago," he said, "a complex one." I inclined my head slightly. "That's correct." The judge sat back in his chair. "I remember," he said. My mother's face drained of color. My brother looked at her, then back at me. I kept my expression neutral. The judge tapped his pen once against the file. "This case," he said, "may require a more careful examination than initially presented." He looked at the plaintiff's attorney. "I suggest we proceed with caution." The attorney forced a smile. "Of course, Your Honor." But something had shifted. I felt it in the air, in the way the room leaned forward, in the way my family suddenly wasn't looking at me like a liability, but like a variable they hadn't calculated. The judge turned back to me. "Miss Hale," he said, "you may submit your documentation." I opened my folder, slowly, deliberately, and as I placed it on the table before me, I realized something my family hadn't yet grasped. They hadn't dragged me to court to ruin me. They'd dragged me into the one room where my name carried more weight than their story, and the hearing had only just begun. The sound my folder made when it touched the table was soft, paper against wood, nothing dramatic, but my family flinched anyway. That alone told me how unprepared they were. The judge leaned forward slightly, fingers steepled, eyes focused, not on me, but on the documents I was now arranging with practiced ease. I didn't rush, I didn't fumble, I didn't perform. I'd done this before. Across the aisle, my mother whispered something to my brother. He shook his head once, sharply, like he was trying to shake loose a thought he didn't like. The plaintiff's attorney cleared his throat again. He did that when he needed to reclaim momentum. "Your Honor," he began, "while Ms. Hale may have previously consulted for the court, that does not negate the fact that she exceeded her authority in this instance." The judge didn't look at him. "Authority," he repeated calmly, "is precisely what we'll be clarifying." He turned to me. "Ms. Hale,
"I'll ask you directly," he said. "What was your role in the family business?" I answered without hesitation. "Operational oversight," I said. "Contract review, compliance verification, risk mitigation." My aunt scoffed quietly. The judge raised a finger without looking at her. "Ms. Hale Sr., you will have an opportunity to speak when addressed." She pressed her lips together. The judge returned his attention to me. "You said operational oversight," he continued. "Were you formally authorized to act on behalf of the business?" "Yes," I said, "in writing." I slid the first document forward. The attorney leaned in to inspect it, his expression tightening as he read the header. "This appears to be a limited power of attorney," he said. "It is. Renewed annually." The judge nodded. "I see signatures." He glanced up. "All plaintiffs," he said. My brother's foot began tapping under the table. The attorney straightened. "Even with limited authority," he argued, "Ms. Hale engaged in actions that benefited her personally." The judge looked at me again. "Did you?" he asked. "Yes," I said calmly. That got a reaction. My mother sucked in a breath. My aunt leaned forward, eyes bright with something close to triumph. The attorney smiled. "There it is." I continued. "I benefited by preventing losses, by correcting errors that would have resulted in penalties, by renegotiating contracts that were out of compliance." The judge raised an eyebrow. "And how did that benefit you personally?" he asked. "By protecting the company I was legally authorized to represent, which, at the time, was my responsibility." The attorney scoffed. "That's a convenient interpretation." "It's documented." I slid another page forward, then another.
And another. Emails, signed approvals, meeting minutes, a pattern. The judge reviewed them slowly. "These communications," he said, "indicate that Ms. Hale repeatedly warned of potential violations." "Yes," I said. "And what happened when you issued those warnings?" he asked. I paused. "Not for effect, for accuracy." "They were ignored," I said, "until they became emergencies." The room felt tighter now. My brother rubbed his face with both hands. The attorney shifted tactics. "Your Honor," he said, "even if Ms. Hale acted with good intentions, the plaintiffs contend that she misrepresented her role to third parties." The judge looked up sharply. "Misrepresented how?" he asked. "She presented herself as a decision-maker," the attorney said. The judge turned to me. "Did you?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. My mother laughed bitterly. "Of course she did." The judge raised his hand again. "Ms. Hale," he said to me, "on whose instruction did you present yourself that way?" I met his gaze. "On theirs," I said. I reached into my folder again and pulled out a chain of emails. "This," I said, "is a directive from my brother." My brother's head snapped up. "You can't—" The judge cut him off. "You'll wait," he said coolly. I continued. "And this," I said, placing another page beside it, "is confirmation from my mother." Her face went rigid. "And this," I added, "is an acknowledgement from my aunt." The attorney's confidence was evaporating in real time. "These messages," the judge said slowly, "instruct Ms. Hale to act on behalf of the company." "Yes," I said, "often urgently, often with little information." The judge leaned back. "And now," he said, "you are accusing her of doing precisely that." The room went very quiet. My mother finally spoke, her voice tight. "She took control," she said. "She made herself indispensable." I didn't react. The judge turned to her. "Did she force you to rely on her?" he asked. My mother hesitated. "No," she said. "Did she withhold information?" he continued.
"No," she admitted. "Did she refuse to step back when asked?" he asked. My mother's eyes flicked to my brother. "No," she said again, quieter. The judge nodded. "Then what," he asked, "is the basis of your claim?"
My brother blurted out, "She made us look incompetent." The words hung in the air. Even the attorney looked startled. The judge stared at him for a long moment. "That," he said slowly, "is not a legal claim." My brother flushed. "She undermined us." "By doing her job?" the judge asked. My brother stopped, because there was nowhere left to go. The attorney tried once more. "Your Honor," he said carefully, "the plaintiff's feelings," the judge interrupted, "are not damages." He turned to me. "Ms. Hale," he said, "did you ever attempt to conceal your actions from the plaintiffs?" "No," I replied. "I documented everything." "Did you profit financially beyond agreed compensation?" he asked. "No," I said. "In fact, I declined bonuses." That caused a stir. The judge raised an eyebrow again. "Why?" he asked. "Because it complicated things," I said, "and I wanted clean lines." He nodded slowly. "Clean lines," he repeated. Then he looked back at the plaintiffs. "You are alleging ruin," he said, "but what I see is resentment." My mother's eyes flashed. "That's unfair." The judge met her gaze evenly. "What's unfair," he said, "is attempting to use the court to settle family grievances." He turned back to the file. "And what's troubling," he added, "is that this court was not informed of Ms. Hale's prior involvement in judicial consultation." The attorney stiffened. "We were not aware." "You should have been," the judge said. "Due diligence matters." He closed the file with a decisive thud. "I am ordering a continuance," he said, "not to benefit either party, but to ensure this matter is handled properly." My mother exhaled sharply. "So this isn't over?" The judge looked at her. "No," he said, "but it is no longer going the way you expected." He turned to me again. "Ms. Hale," he said, "I advise you to retain independent counsel." "I already have," I replied. That drew a few raised eyebrows. The judge nodded approvingly. "Good," he said. "I also suggest that all parties reconsider their positions." He paused. "Because at this moment," he added, "the credibility gap is not where you think it is."
The gavel came down. The session adjourned. People began to stand, to whisper, to move. My family didn't. They stayed seated, frozen in a tableau of recalculation. As I gathered my folder, my mother finally looked at me, not with anger, with something closer to fear. "You didn't have to do all this," she said quietly. I met her gaze. "You didn't have to take me to court," I replied. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, the plaintiff's attorney was already speaking in low, urgent tones. For the first time since the summons arrived, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief, certainty. They hadn't brought me to court to ruin me. They'd brought me into the only arena where their story couldn't survive contact with facts. And the judge? He hadn't just recognized my name, he'd recognized the pattern, and that was far more dangerous for them than anything I could have said. The hallway outside the courtroom buzzed with low voices and restless movement, but my family stayed where they were, seated, silent, stunned. I didn't wait for them. I walked past wooden doors, past the bench where strangers whispered about cases that weren't theirs, and out into the sharp afternoon light. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd expected a delayed tremor, some kind of emotional backlash. Instead, I felt clear. My phone buzzed before I reached the steps. A message from my lawyer. "They overplayed their hand. This is already shifting." I slipped the phone back into my bag without replying. I didn't need reassurance. I'd seen it in the judge's eyes, the moment he stopped listening to what they were saying and started paying attention to why. That's when cases turn. They didn't let it rest. Of course they didn't. That evening, my mother called. I let it ring twice before answering. "You embarrassed us," she said without preamble. I leaned against my kitchen counter, shoes kicked off, the quiet of my apartment wrapping around me like armor. "I sued you, publicly." "That was different," she snapped. "We had no choice."
"You always had a choice," I replied. "You just didn't like the ones that didn't involve controlling the outcome." She inhaled sharply. "You think you're smarter than everyone else." "No," I said. "I think I'm finally done pretending I'm not." Silence stretched between us. "You blindsided your brother," she said finally. I closed my eyes briefly. "He blindsided himself," I replied. "He told the truth out loud." She scoffed. "You know what he meant." "I do, and that's the problem."
She lowered her voice. "This doesn't have to get uglier." I smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. "You already made it ugly," I said. "I'm just not hiding it." She hung up without saying goodbye. The next filing arrived 2 days later, an amended complaint, longer, more aggressive, framed as damage control but dripping with accusation. They leaned hard into intent, claimed I'd manipulated situations, positioned myself strategically, engineered dependence. It was almost flattering. My lawyer called within the hour. "They're scrambling," she said. "This isn't about winning anymore. It's about saving face." "Is it working?" I asked. "No," she replied. "They're contradicting their own timeline." I smiled. That was the thing about documentation. It doesn't panic. The second hearing was scheduled for the following week. This time, the gallery was fuller, not because my case was special, but because word travels fast in legal buildings, and people notice when a judge pauses longer than usual. My family arrived separately this time. That told me more than anything else. My brother avoided my eyes. My aunts whispered nervously. My mother sat rigid, spine straight, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. The judge entered and took his seat. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He looked disappointed. That was worse. "Before we proceed," he said, "I want to address the amended filing." The plaintiff's attorney stood quickly. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge raised a hand. "I have reviewed it thoroughly." The attorney sat back down. "This filing," the judge continued, "introduces new claims without new evidence." My brother swallowed audibly. "It also attempts to reframe documented authorization as manipulation, which raises concerns." My mother leaned forward. "Your Honor." "Ms. Hale Sr., the judge interrupted calmly, "you will wait." The room stilled. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Hale," he said, "your counsel has submitted additional materials." "Yes," I replied. He nodded. "Including correspondence that predates the alleged misconduct." "Yes." "Which demonstrates," he continued, "that you repeatedly attempted to step back from your role." "That's correct," I said. He looked down at the papers. "These emails," he said, "show you recommending outside consultants." "Yes," I replied, "multiple times."
"And those recommendations were declined?" he asked. "Consistently," I said. The judge looked up. "By the plaintiffs," he clarified. "Yes." He leaned back in his chair. "So let me summarize," he said slowly. "You were asked to take responsibility. You were authorized to act. You documented your actions. You attempted to distribute authority. And when the outcomes were no longer convenient, you were sued." No one spoke. The judge turned to the plaintiff's attorney. "Counsel," he said, "do you dispute that summary?" The attorney opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "No, Your Honor." My brother's shoulders slumped. My mother stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The judge nodded once. "Then I have a question," he said. "Why is this case still before me?" The question wasn't rhetorical. It was surgical. The attorney cleared his throat. "The plaintiffs believe Miss Hale exceeded the spirit of her role." The judge tilted his head. "The spirit," he repeated, "as opposed to the letter." "Yes," the attorney said. The judge's expression hardened. "This court does not adjudicate hurt pride," he said. "It adjudicates facts." He turned to my family. "You brought this case," he said, "claiming ruin." He gestured to the filings. "What I see instead is an attempt to assign blame." My brother spoke suddenly, voice strained. "She didn't trust us." The judge looked at him. "Trust," he said, "is not demanded, it is earned." My brother fell silent. The judge exhaled slowly, then leaned forward. "I am issuing a warning," he said, "to the plaintiffs." My mother's head snapped up. "This court will not be used to settle internal power struggles," he continued. "If this matter proceeds without substantive new evidence, sanctions will be considered." A murmur rippled through the room. Sanctions. That was new. The judge turned to me again. "Ms. Hale," he said, "I suggest you prepare for discovery." I nodded. "I already have." That earned the faintest hint of approval. The gavel came down. Recess. In the hallway, my brother caught up to me. "Wait," he said. I stopped, but didn't turn.
"You didn't have to push it this far," he said quietly. I faced him then. "You pushed first," I replied. "I just didn't step back." He ran a hand through his hair. "We're family," he said. I held his gaze. "Then stop treating me like the problem when I refuse to be your shield," I said. He looked away. "I didn't think it would turn into this," he admitted. I nodded. "That's because you thought the court would believe you," I said, "not me." He didn't answer. I walked past him and toward the exit. Outside, the sky was overcast, heavy with the promise of rain. I took a deep breath. This wasn't over, but it was no longer uncertain. They'd dragged me to court to ruin me, to strip my credibility, my standing, my voice. Instead, they'd put me in front of a judge who understood something they never did. Competence doesn't need permission, and once recognized, it can't be undone by resentment masquerading as justice. Discovery changes people. It doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives with deadlines, lists, requests, subpoenas written in language so dry it feels harmless until you realize what they demand. Every email, every authorization, every decision trail. My lawyer warned me, "This is where most people panic," she said, "not because they lied, but because they didn't expect to be examined." I didn't panic. I organized. The first production request my family submitted was aggressive. They wanted everything. Communications going back 10 years, financial records, personal notes, drafts, deleted files, anything that could suggest intent. It was phishing, and phishing only works if the water is murky. Mine wasn't. I sent my lawyer a single message: produce everything, no redactions beyond privilege. She called me immediately. "You're sure?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Let them see how careful I was." She paused, then said quietly, "That's not common." I know, that's why it works. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that for years I'd documented my work not out of paranoia, but out of habit. Every approval logged, every refusal recorded, every recommendation followed up in writing. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I trusted systems more than people. My family, on the other hand, produced selectively. Late, incomplete, disorganized, emails missing attachments, threads ending abruptly, lost files that should have existed. The pattern emerged quietly, and the judge noticed. The motion hearing happened on a Friday. The room felt different this time, less crowded, more focused. The judge reviewed the discovery summaries without speaking for several minutes. No one interrupted him. No one dared. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "Counsel," he said to the plaintiff's attorney, "you've asserted that Miss Hale concealed information." "Yes, Your Honor," the attorney replied. "We believe—"
The judge raised a hand. "I'm not asking what you believe," he said. "I'm asking where it is." The attorney hesitated. "We are still awaiting." "No," the judge interrupted calmly. "You are not." He tapped the file. "You received full production within the required window," he said. "Your own production, however, is lacking." My mother shifted sharply in her seat. "Your Honor," she said, unable to stop herself, "this is unfair. We didn't realize." The judge turned to her. "You didn't realize you'd be held to the same standard?" he asked. Silence. He continued, "I am concerned by the asymmetry here." He looked at me. "Miss Hale," he said, "you have been transparent." Then he looked back at my family. "You have been strategic." That word landed hard. Strategic. Not malicious, not criminal, but intentional. And intention changes everything. The turning point came when the judge addressed a single email, one my brother had sent late one night, years ago. I'd almost forgotten about it. The judge hadn't. "This message," he said, holding up a page, "directs Miss Hale to handle it quietly and assures her that no one needs to know the details." My brother's face went pale. "You later accuse her," the judge continued, "of misrepresentation." He looked up. "Explain that to me." My brother opened his mouth, closed it.
Then said, "She knew what I meant." The judge nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "she did." He leaned forward. "And what you meant," he added, "was that you wanted the benefit of her competence without the accountability of acknowledging it." My mother inhaled sharply. "That's not fair," she said. The judge didn't look at her. "Fairness," he replied, "is not the issue." He looked at all of them. "Control is." The room went very still. During a brief recess, my aunt approached me, not angrily, not dramatically. "You didn't have to expose us like this," she said quietly. I met her gaze. "You didn't have to accuse me," I replied. She looked away. When proceedings resumed, the judge spoke plainly. "I am not prepared," he said, "to allow this case to proceed to trial in its current form." My mother's head snapped up. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," the judge replied, "that the plaintiffs must reassess their claims." The attorney stiffened. "Your Honor, I am also considering," the judge continued, "whether portions of this complaint were filed in bad faith." Bad faith. The words sucked the air from the room. My brother looked at my mother. She didn't look back. The judge turned to me. "Miss Hale," he said, "you have demonstrated consistency, transparency, and restraint." He paused. "Qualities this court takes seriously." I nodded once. He then looked at my family again. "You have two options," he said. "Narrow your claims substantially or withdraw them." My mother's voice shook. "You're saying we should just give up?" The judge's gaze was steady. "I'm saying," he replied, "that continuing may expose more than you intend." The recess ended. The hearing adjourned. But the case? It was effectively over. They just didn't know it yet. That night, my brother called again. His voice sounded tired, older. "We didn't think it would go this way," he said. "I know," I replied.
"You're not even angry," he said. "That's the worst part." I thought about that. "I was," I said, "for a long time. Then I got tired of carrying it." He exhaled slowly. "Mom wants to settle," he said. I closed my eyes. "Tell her," I replied, "that settlements require honesty." There was a pause. "Will you destroy us?" he asked quietly. I opened my eyes. "I didn't come to court to destroy anyone," I said. "I came to defend myself." He swallowed. "That might be worse," he said. I didn't disagree. The truth about court isn't that it's loud. It's that it's precise. It strips stories down to their skeletons and asks one simple question: who benefited from the confusion? And for the first time, my family was realizing the answer wasn't me. They dragged me to court to ruin me.
Instead, they dragged their assumptions into a room where assumptions don't survive. And the judge? He didn't just recognize my name anymore. He recognized exactly what they'd tried to do with it. The settlement offer arrived quietly. No courier, no grand language, just an email forwarded by my lawyer with a subject line so neutral it almost felt embarrassed. Proposed resolution. I read it once, then again. Then I closed my laptop and sat in the stillness of my apartment, letting the meaning settle. They were withdrawing the claims. All of them. No admission of wrongdoing, no apology, just a carefully worded agreement to walk away, each party bearing their own costs, the matter sealed, no further action. It was exactly what people offer when they realize they can't win, but still want to pretend they were never wrong. My lawyer called an hour later. "They're scared," she said plainly, "and they should be." "I don't want revenge," I replied. "I know. That's why this works in your favor." We met one last time, not in court, in a conference room with no judge, no gallery, no gavel, just a long table and the truth sitting between us like something no one wanted to touch first. My family arrived together again, but it wasn't the same unity as before. This time, they didn't sit close, they didn't whisper, they didn't smile. My mother looked tired, my brother looked hollow, my aunts looked embarrassed.
The attorney slid the papers across the table. "This resolves the matter," he said, "provided all parties agree." Everyone looked at me. That was new. I read the agreement carefully. Every clause, every condition. Then I looked up. "You sued me," I said calmly. "You accused me of ruining you." No one interrupted. "You tried to dismantle my credibility in public," I continued, "and now you want silence." My mother opened her mouth. I raised my hand. "I'm not finished." She closed it. "I will agree to this," I said, "under one condition." The attorney stiffened. "Which is?" I met my family's eyes one by one. "That you acknowledge here, in writing, that I acted with authorization and in good faith." My brother inhaled sharply. "That's," my aunt began. "Non-negotiable," I said. The attorney hesitated. "That language implies—" "Accuracy," I replied. "Nothing more." Silence stretched. Then my mother spoke. "Do it," she said quietly. Everyone turned to her. "We're done pretending. We lost." The attorney nodded slowly and made the change. I signed. They signed. Just like that, it was over. Outside the building, my brother stopped me. "He never thought the judge would see through it," he said. I looked at him. "He didn't see through me," I replied. "He saw through you." My brother swallowed. "You could have destroyed us," he said. I shook my head. "You destroyed the illusion yourselves," I said. "I just didn't stop you." He didn't argue. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that, but it became quieter, cleaner. My name stopped being whispered with suspicion and started being spoken with respect again, not because of the case, but because of how I handled it. I was asked to consult again, this time with contracts, with boundaries, with clarity, and I accepted, on my terms. My family retreated. Not dramatically, not angrily, just carefully. They'd learned something they couldn't unlearn. I wasn't the liability. I never had been. Months later, I ran into the judge at a professional event. He nodded when he saw me. "Miss Hale," he said, "good to see you." "Likewise, Your Honor," I replied. He studied me for a moment. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Many don't." "Thank you," I said. He smiled faintly. "Names matter, but reputations matter more." I nodded. He'd recognized my name, but more importantly, he'd recognized my restraint, and that's what changed everything. People like to think court is about winning. It's not. It's about being seen clearly.
My family dragged me there to ruin me, to rewrite the story, to paint me as the villain, to reclaim control they thought I'd stolen. Instead, they handed me the one place where facts outweigh feelings and documentation outlives resentment. They brought me before a judge who recognized my name. But what truly ended them wasn't recognition, it was exposure. Because once the truth stands on the record, it doesn't belong to anyone anymore. And I walked out of that courtroom with exactly what I'd always deserved: my integrity intact, my voice unchallenged, and my name finally untouchable.